Hello and welcome back to the Game Pass Games Club. We're going to talk about Game Pass games and kind of do many first impressions on all of them. That's how this show works. Everyone got it? Great. We picked 4 games last time to take a look at, and we're going to start with Wyatt can't join us today. He is unfortunately sick, so we're going to start with his game, which was Wasteland 3, and talk about this a little bit. And we're going to go through each of these games in a non-spoilery way, because we've all only played the first hour to 2 hours-ish of most of the games.
Most of them, yeah.
Most of them. We'll talk about that when we get to it. So Wasteland 3 is, for people that haven't heard of it before, a CRPG-inspired XCOM combat system-esque tactics RPG. I think that's probably the best billing for it. Very Fallout-y universe. It is post-apocalyptic Colorado that you're trudging through in this game. I want to get just general thoughts from you two first. I'm curious, 'cause I think I've played more Wasteland 3 than anyone here because I played it when it came out for a good deal of time. So I don't want to taint your opinions with my own first.
For not playing the original 2 games, I'd say it seems like your I guess bog standard, but still I guess interesting post-apocalyptic setting. It's post-apocalyptic, I think.
I know you, Alex, have a story to tell about Wasteland.
And oh god, we're gonna go right into that first.
Might as well.
I thought I would enjoy like the vibe and the overall aesthetic of it, because there's very winter survivalist punk core.
Yeah,
I don't know what
survivalist punk.
Yeah.
Post-apocalypse survival punk.
Yeah, I'm a total wilderness cell.
Scott.
Never say that
again. So the story I had with this game is I've done the 2 hours, like that and change. I could not make it past the tutorial. Something in the universe does not want me to play this game.
Oh no.
And I don't know what that force is. And it's not for the game bugging out or anything, or at least I think so. The characters that I played on first, and I played 3 different character groupings to see if I could make it past the tutorial. And I couldn't. The guys that I went on first, which I thought was like, oh, that seems like a cool pairing. You have the very stealthy mute dad who loves to do melee attacks, and then you have the sniper daughter.
Yeah.
That's a fun pair. I would one-shot most enemies, so you'd think I'd make it through the tutorial easily, right? They are the furthest that I got.
Okay, how far was that? What was the roadblock for you?
What's like what do you guys think the boss of the tutorial is? Because I got it to like there's a guy that you can talk to, and he gives a big speech, and if you stall him for long enough, you get a very visceral shot.
Oh yeah, so that's the final tutorial boss. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got to him, and then I'm just absolutely eviscerated. And this is on normal difficulty.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, that's not really working. And I went back from normal difficulty to easy.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to make the same decisions, trying to like minimize the weird things that could go wrong. I'm stomped in not the first encounter, but the one right after you rescue the first hostage. However,
okay.
or
so I think
rescue,
I can predict one of the challenges you definitely ran into, I think. Which is, did you end up starting combat, the enemy turn happened immediately, you got shot a bunch before you were in cover, and then you didn't get to move until after?
That happened the first time, and I made it through them. The second time, I did kill the person who's holding her hostage so she doesn't warn her friends, and I got to go first, and they stomped me on an easier difficulty. I don't know what was going on, so I'm just like, okay, I'm making negative progress.
So Wasteland 3
guys.
is a dice roll system, essentially. It is That will happen.
So I
Many
thought, okay,
times.
I'm making negative progress with these guys. As much as I like their pair up, it's time to do something else. I did the tech and the science people.
Oh no.
Not a very good pick health wise, but I thought, you know what, I want to experiment with that. Oh, there was a computer terminal that I saw earlier. I want to hack into that with the science people. That's as far as I got, and I tried to, and this might have been a glitch, but I was trying to move my characters out of the screen, and they wouldn't, and then they just backed right on up into the giant mechs. Um, detection area, and it instantly killed them.
Yeah.
And
You're supposed to go past those.
You
I was
just
trying
sneak
to.
past
I was
it.
clicking forward, and they backed up. Why would
So-
they do that?
I would recommend, to be honest, playing this game with a controller, which
It did feel good on a controller.
is a weird suggestion for it being an XCOM style combat system. The mouse and keyboard controls do work. They are functional, but man, they have some weird little eccentricities that make it very difficult to do some basic things. So, it's an interesting dichotomy, but I tried playing with a controller just by accident because I had my controller plugged in when I launched the game, and it felt a lot better.
Oh.
Because you can like individually easily swap between your groups. The fix for when combat starts and you just get eviscerated before you even get a turn, you have to take cover and then take a shot at someone first, and you can't let them discover you, because if they discover you, you're gonna get shot up instantly. So it's a little
Also, like,
unforgiving.
There was something really annoying because like the sniper girl when I was first playing through was always staying alive, but
Yeah.
the dad would be downed every time because he was a melee unit and everyone got up in his business.
Yes.
You can't, or at least I haven't figured out how or gotten far enough in the game, you can't trade supplies between characters. And I was always picking everything up with the sniper girl.
You can.
So-
It's a weird UI. I do
And
remember that being the case. So I had to
So
look
the
up how to
dad
change
could
items.
never heal himself when he was low and about to be. I can't get over there because the sniper can only move like one square at a time at some points for some reason.
Oh, you can also only equip like 2 items. That's the important. You only get like 2 potions per fight if you equip them.
Oh,
Wasteland is an unforgiving game.
the third, and keep in mind the second playthrough with the scientists that was still on easy, so I went down to tourist difficulty, which says trivial combat.
Yep.
Just experience the story. And I went on the punk couple, those characters, and I was like, okay, these guys seem like heavy gunners. Maybe I can make it through the combat this time. I don't make it through the first battle to the point where you could arm the laser. The enemies ignore the NPCs and shoot directly for me.
Oh, Alex, this is your
I
Cuphead
don't
moment.
get it.
This is your Cuphead tutorial moment, Alex.
You've had an unfortunate experience with this game.
Oh my god.
You also easily managed to somehow skirt the only starting duo that I think is actually a functional tutorial duo is Yuri and Spence. With one of them has
The
an
first
has
two
an
that show
assault
up?
rifle. Yeah, the first 2 that are the default. One of them has an assault rifle, one of them has a pistol, and they are geared well enough that you can pretty easily get through that first encounter because they have like a couple of bonus items that make you have a higher hit chance and your crit chance is much bigger. So you end up one-shotting a lot of enemies, which makes it much easier to get through that tutorial encounter. And you can, once you're out of the tutorial, hire like a essentially infinite number of custom characters that are fully outfitted to what you want to do. So I will tell you, Alex, you're not alone. I did, despite having already played this game, I started a new game, played the tutorial, I was like, okay, I'll make my characters. For some reason, a little stupid me thought it was a great idea to not put any points in any weapons thing on either of the characters.
Good job.
Because I forgot that weapons had stat requirements.
Yeah.
So that time I made 2 characters, one of which was a brawler and one of which was a like longer range shotgun, not quite shotgun, actual rifle user. So I had the range and the melee. Not a good idea. It's a bad idea to start with a melee character in that game at the beginning because it's extremely difficult to get anywhere close to an enemy and do damage reliably unless you've intentionally geared your character out in a way in the custom character creator that they can survive that. Not easy to do. Then I restarted it again with Yuri and Spence, breeze through it. No difficulty whatsoever. It is an uneven game.
I'm gonna make both of you a little upset. I started with the gay punks, and I did
Yep.
fine. I was breezing through everything pretty much.
Were you
the
on
only time I was on normal.
Yeah.
Not
The
Taurus
only
difficulty.
time
You made
I
it
was like,
perfectly
oh man, this
fine.
guy might die is when I put him a little too close to one of those explosive barrels and he was burning for a few turns, but he out healed the burn because I made sure to give him a healing thing.
Ooh.
Yeah. Gotta use that first aid.
So I definitely I was paying like 150% attention to all the mechanics and stuff that they were talking about because I am not a strategy RPG person. And I was trying to do my best to not let my like not like distaste but like preference against strategy RPGs to ruin like the first hour of this game for me. So I just like really tried to learn. And there's a lot of things where it's like the whole thing where it's like, oh yeah, if you walk into a place where enemies will see you, their lasers will be pointing at you. They just say that in like half a sentence, and it gets blown away, and they never talk about it again.
Yep.
So if you miss that, then that's probably why you could just walk into an area and just everyone focuses on you instead of the NPCs because they're probably, those orange lasers facing you actually mean something instead of just looking cool.
The one thing that I will admit to doing completely smooth brain stupidly at the beginning, but I also feel like it's partially the game's fault. Because I have to retain that little bit of integrity or dignity or whatever it is. I don't know. I don't
A
have
little bit of pride.
pride. Yeah, there we go. Because he was the melee unit when I was doing the sniper and melee stealth duo. When I finally got the beam cannon up and ready, he my melee guy was in range of it, but I couldn't tell because there
You
was
can
no
target.
radius showing where the
There's a
laser was
radius.
going.
There's a radius.
There,
There is.
I will play the game again and show you that there was not a radius for me.
There is.
If that happened, you had a bug. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah.
There is a giant red circle that's meant to be there that tells you everything in range.
And that's surprising for me because I figured it would run better on PC better than it did on console because I played all these games on console
Yeah.
and for whatever reason, Wasteland 3 was giving the Xbox One some trouble. I had a lot
Wasteland
of
3 is not a well optimized game. I'll throw that out there. It is not.
Yeah.
It is a smaller team with a weird budget. I am impressed it is as polished as it is.
Yeah.
Given the size of that team. But yeah, I think the interesting thing that not a lot of you, did you go a lot further than the tutorial, Brett, or did you mostly finish that section?
Yeah, I've just finished that section, and that was kind of it. I feel like I got it good.
Yeah, so around that, you see at the start, a lot of your choices have some consequences. You can learn that first of all, there's 3 other people in your thing. You can save 2 of them, not the third. The third will always die, as well as the major, who always dies at the end of that tutorial. And then you have Jesse Bell. You can save by shooting the person before you get in range to start a dialogue, or by talking right out of the dialogue incorrectly, which will then mean the other dude will die in the next area. So there's like a string of things that will happen.
2 other guys in the next area. Right?
Yeah, and one of them will always die. But one of them you can save by eliminating the person holding up Jesse at the start. So there's a big list of like compounding actions that have greater and greater effects that gets dramatically more proficient and like even more impactful as the game goes on, which I think a lot of people will really enjoy with Wasteland 3. Your choices do have major consequences, and it does really enable you to play in a couple of different ways. Like the kiss ass and hard ass options do definitely allow you to play in very different ways. So
yeah,
I think there's definitely some cool opportunity for player investment there. My biggest like thing with this game is, even after playing a lot further in the game, I just don't have the personal preference for a party that I've entirely created compared to a party of pre-existing characters. I don't know what it is with me and party-based games like this. I like having one created character, But then the rest of them I like to be like characters with background. And in Wasteland 3 there are companions. You can get custom like characters with stories, but they fill their own separate slots. So you'll have 6 party members at a certain point instead of 4. And the 2 of them will be actual companion characters, and then the other 4 are your custom characters. I think some people will really like that, some people won't, so that's just a thing to know going in, is if you want like your own characters to have a background, you have to kind of come up with it yourself. So it's more of a proper classic role-playing game than some of the more modern CRPGs that have come out. Yeah,
it seems that way.
I don't know, I think I'm left with Wasteland thinking this is a good game that's probably not my jam. Which is weird, because I normally really enjoy tactics games. I think something with Wasteland 3. Maybe it's the post-apocalypse setting. I think I'm not as huge on post-apocalypse as a lot of other people are. I think it's just not my
I really would have
preference.
liked to enjoy the rest of the game and the consequences of my actions in
Hey.
dialogue and story, and not in just not being able to complete the tutorial for some godforsaken reason.
I will say, if you do want to play the game just for the story, that is a perfectly viable way to play, because the story here is very reactive.
I got so sick of the boss music by the end of that fight. I'm just like, you're bathing in the blood of the lamb.
Alex,
blah,
you have no
blah,
idea
blah.
how much I wish you had recorded a video of
really.
you going through this. I think it would have been very entertaining. But yeah, I think this game's good. It's just not going to be for everyone. I do think this is a game that has hugely benefited from being a Game Pass Day 1 title.
For sure, yeah.
This definitely feels like the kind of game that, like, playing it with Game Pass, I think a lot more people are going to play this than would otherwise try it. And it's a very interesting game. If you haven't played anything like XCOM before, the combat system here I would say is most akin to XCOM, even though it is a strategy RPG. It has a lot more like story focus than XCOM does. I think that's the most similar combat system. So if you enjoy that, definitely check it out. Especially if you're wanting a longer narrative to sink your teeth into. Got some interesting stuff going on. All right. Final thoughts on Wasteland 3.
It's like the most middling game of the notes that I've taken for this one. I definitely didn't hate it, but like it's just not for me.
Wasn't singing to you.
Yeah. I like the setting a lot. The hopeless, like, snowy wasteland thing is pretty is something I enjoy. But I don't know. It was not ever gonna be my thing, because it's the type of RPG that it is. But I tried it, and I apparently didn't do too badly. So I guess it was fine.
Hey, this is
There's
what
a lot of
happens when
character in the
you
dialogue.
forget to read the tutorial after not playing the game for a year and a half. And then trying to play it. It becomes hard again.
Oh, I really like the term Warmlanders, or was that what they used to refer to the team from Arizona?
Hotlanders.
Hotlanders,
Yeah.
that was it.
And Arizona this is kind of a loose continuation of Wasteland 2. It's not the same characters, but there are some references to Wasteland 2, which was a game that came out originally a long time ago, and then was remade very recently, and is also a very good game. Wasteland 2 is much more the classic Fallout approach, which is very fun. But yeah, it's an interesting series that I think a lot of people will get some good time out of. All right, moving on. Which one of you wants to go next? You know what? Executive decision. We're going to leave Deedlit for last, because I think Deedlit's going to be the longest.
Yeah, probably.
By a pretty significant degree. So, do we want to do Tunic? Or do we want to do Far?
Do Tunic, might as well.
Tunic, alright. So Tunic was the surprise drop that happened right after we decided the games originally. So we were just like, alright, we're going to replace one of the ones with Tunic.
Yep.
Brett, have you enjoyed Tunic? Was it a good pick?
I think, for me at least, and my specific, qualifications of what is a Brett game, I think I truly did pick a Brett game. I mean, if you like classic Zelda, we're talking like the OG Link to the Past, Oracle of Ages, Seasons, those kind of games, and you're mad at the world that Breath of the Wild took the entire industry by storm and there will never be a classic Zelda game again, you can rest easy knowing that the indie scene has got you covered because Tunic is the best not Zelda so far, at least. I haven't gotten too far. I am a couple hours in, but it's weird. It's one of those games where if you spend if someone spends 1 hour in it, they might get, depending on the way that they play games, as far in as someone who's played it for like 4 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
Just because it takes the approach of the very first Legend of Zelda game where there's just like pretty much no direction and you can just kind of go. And your only roadblocks are things like Metroidvania. You can't get through that wall. You don't have the thing to break it. You can't get through that bush. You don't have the sword to slash it, kind of thing. Or you can try to fight this enemy, but you don't. You only have a stick. So have fun.
Can't believe you,
That
but
sort of thing. Um, yeah, I can't either. But it's all in, kind of the veil of a very lovingly crafted. I mean, this is a single man project, isn't it? For the most part, it
oh,
just took a really long time to make it.
Yeah, I think it was maybe 2 people for a while. I think there was
Yeah.
an artist and a programmer on this, but I could be wrong. I'll check
I
in
don't know very
on
well.
that while you're
Yeah,
talking.
because either way, it's just like it's the same thing with Project Wingman, where it's like you're gonna tell me that fewer than 5 people like have their name on the dev team for this project. Of
Yeah.
course, I'm gonna like it. I mean, they did such a good job. It's also like pretty rare nowadays. You don't really get a lot of press on the one man indie projects because 10 years ago or whatever, every indie project was a one man project. It would just be made in like JRPG Maker. You got your Eebs, your Aonis, all your like JRPG horror games made by one man and is flat in Japan.
Yeah.
uh
Can
and
confirm.
this is
Primarily designed and programmed by one person, Andrew Schuldis, and then
yes.
additional artists Eric Billingsley and Mako, as well as composers, were brought in. So,
mm.
That makes sense. Yeah.
a couple people, but
Oh, the
most of them were
music in there
probably
was
contracted
wonderful.
and not full-time employees.
Yeah. The music was great, the art was great. I am
Love the
definitely
visual
going to finish
style.
this game. Yeah. And for a one man project for the most part, again with those contractors, pretty polished in my experience at least. I didn't have
Yeah,
any like
they chose a good scope for this game,
they did, yeah.
where it has complexity, but the complexity, kind of unveils in layers. And so at the start, it's simple enough that you can get a grasp on it, and then you'll gradually get more and more pieces of the manual, which guides you to more and more mechanics that you can do.
Oh, the manual is
Manual is
ridiculously
excellent.
fun.
It's one of my favorite
Oh, wow.
like
It's
unlockable
perfect.
systems.
And the sound design for it, flipping the pages too.
Yes.
Oh,
Now that
Yep.
you can zoom in and see like the printing texture on it,
Yeah,
yeah.
excellent.
and oh, I don't. Have you guys discovered any of the secrets yet? For
Depends on what you count as a secret, because
Yeah.
Tunic is a game that's
the
everything is
pen
kind of a secret.
markings,
Like
the
one
pen
or two.
markings. It's got finding those out was so fun, and then finding out the sequence to unlock certain doors. By like trial and error, seeing the clues in the manual, and then actually getting out a notebook and like marking out, okay, if that's that, then this is that. Oh, wait, the pattern's different here. So if it's flipped, then oh my god, it's so there was not a single point in this game, even with like some frustrating combat areas that someone in the podcast who isn't here might describe as Souls-like. Um,
Well, to be honest, they can be very Souls-like.
but
with
lightly.
giant air quotes.
With giant air quotes, some of the
Yeah.
boss
I-
fights are definitely inspired by Souls fights.
I did never not have a blast playing this, and
Mhm.
I'm still really enjoying it. Now on my search for all the manual pages because I realized there are different endings you can get.
Oh,
Yeah, I
And
think I've probably played Tunic. I don't know if I've played it more than Brett or not, but I definitely played it less than Alex. I think my thing with Tunic is I'm really enjoying it, but for me, this is a slow burn game. This is a
Oh,
game that I'm gonna
totally.
like chip away at over a while. I think, just because I had a combination of problems. So when we started this episode, I had old hardware, and my laptop was steadily dying as I was playing Tunic, and so I went from being able to play the game perfectly one day to the next day, Tunic would start to stutter. Like every 25 seconds on the dot, it would stutter as my GPU started to overheat and had to throttle itself to go back down, and then it would heat back up, and then throttle back down, like every 30-ish seconds. So what would happen is the game would play perfectly for 30 seconds at a time, and then there'd be like 1 second where it just freezes and keeps playing, which is not good for a game with boss fights where you need to dodge things.
Yeah.
So I had to stop playing at that point. At that point, I already played like 3 hours of the game and was having a good time, but I just couldn't keep playing it like that. Got new hardware, started playing it again. Tons of fun this time. Now that it's not borking out constantly.
Would
very
love to
enjoyable.
watch some of you guys play if you want to stream it, because oh god, I have a feeling it's going to be as fun to watch as it is to play.
I think Tunic is definitely a really enjoyable game. I'm going to finish it at some point. I might finish Dodgeball Academia first because I still want to get through that. But Tunic has been very fun.
Really want them to release like either just like a little cosmetic mask, or I'll make the mod myself if I have to, if I have to figure out how to mod it. But
I want a plush little
so
Tunic
badly,
fox.
yes.
Yeah.
I just want to have like a title replacer that says Links to the Past, LYNX, and have the fox head replaced with a Links. And I'm just like,
That's pretty good.
I have to do it.
I like
That's
that.
pretty
It
fun.
must be done.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think the art style is more excellent than we can possibly give it credit for.
Yeah.
This game looks great. It flows very well from area to area. I've got like a couple minor nitpicks on my list. Some of the areas I was stuck in the like second-ish main area, the West Bell Tower, where you have to like navigate underneath some bridges. And I consistently had this problem with the bridges where I could not tell if there was ground underneath them, just because like the ground underneath lined up so perfectly with the bridge on top that I was just like, oh, it doesn't look like there's floor here, so I just turned around. I didn't try to go through it because I was just like, oh, this clearly is like water going somewhere else. I can't cross that yet. So
yeah, there's some parts where I found out completely on accident. Oh, I can stand on the water in some places.
Yeah,
Like,
I figured that out eventually,
tonal
but there's definitely some areas where it feels like they didn't account for people being a little, I don't want to say stupid, but maybe not as QA testery as other people and like running into walls and whatnot. So I was like, oh, well, there's not a path here. I'm going to go back and check out the other direction because there's no fast travel system until I think it seems like there is a fast travel system. If there is, I haven't unlocked it yet. Aside from like partially, so it means backtracking can become very difficult. So I think that leads to making it so that you're less willing to explore in some ways. And I do think the way that I played this game probably hurt the experience a little bit because I'm the type of person, when I play a Souls game, I'm going to go to every corner of the map and explore everything all the time. That's what I do. With Tunic, I did the same thing, and what ended up happening is when I would die, I would lose the way back to where I was, which would make it very hard to tell what areas of the map I'd already been to and whatnot. So I think that kind of hurt it a little bit, but that's not necessarily on the game. That's just like the way that I play these games kind of made it harder to keep track of what was going on, because it feels like Tunic wants you to very meticulously clear out area by area and not really just go off in a direction, which is what I tend to do. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I'm curious if that opinion is shared by anyone.
For me, I mean, I've been looking like for a game like this for a really long time. It's no secret that I am a huge fan of Hyperlight Drifter, which is like pretty much this exact same kind of thing, just with like fewer areas and more tighter combat. But I think if anything, playing more games like that has kind of trained my brain to be like, because Hyperlight Drifter has, okay, when you see a certain symbol on the wall or on the floor, a secret is nearby, and I'm going to tear apart the entire room that symbol is in until I find where I can clip through the wall and go to the next room.
Yeah.
And there's also
Gotta have bombs on you.
Yes. Well, there are bombs in Hyperlight Drifter, but they're not really
And I'll
used for-
rephrase my complaint about the wall clipping, because I do love the wall clipping in certain areas. But when it's a thing that's required to get to the next like major area,
yeah.
that's the bit where I thought it was maybe out of place. Is like when you needed to go that way to progress the things you had to do
Mhm.
was the only time I had a problem with it. When it's like the regular stuff and you unlock like a shortcut or something with that, I'm fine with it.
Yeah. I definitely agree that there's probably some, you know, finagling that could have been done to not have those be like the required things. But at the same time, I think I'm kind of torn on it because I think that kind of adds to, you're mushing your face into the wall for everything else. You're going to find the way eventually anyway, because clearly this game also is not the kind of game to hold your hand. This does
Yeah.
what non-guns failed to do and what Elden Ring did almost perfectly. I think Tunic does almost perfectly as well, and that you're going to get your notebook out. Sorry, Twitter. And you're gonna
Sorry, Twitter.
because people complain so much about Elden Ring not having like waypoints and everything, and people taking notebooks out is like stupid now when they
What?
enjoy a game that much
No.
to try to like figure out puzzles that way. Um,
I wish
If
more
you don't
games required me
enjoy-
to have a notebook.
exactly,
God.
because that means that a lot of love went into crafting it in a way that would make someone have fun solving a puzzle.
Me turning my notebook upside down in that eureka moment was mind-shattering. I have not had that in so
I'm
many
excited to
years.
see what you're talking about turning it
Yeah,
upside down.
yeah.
I haven't tried that yet, so we'll see.
But yeah, highly recommended if you are someone that has played video games for more than a month of their life and understands context clues, how to press buttons, when to sit at the bonfires, and has the brain of a human being. I think you will enjoy this game if you are all of those things.
Yeah, and trust, even if you think you've soft locked yourself, you probably
have
have
not.
not soft locked yourself.
Yes.
Oh, are we going to hear why it's, I guess, rebuttals or takes at the beginning of the next podcast episode? Or
Hopefully,
that he's in.
well, that'll be up to him. So we'll see. I know he has
Would like
opinions
his
on
takes.
Tunic, at least.
Oh, I know he does.
So
I'd also like to hear his takes on the other games.
we'll
though.
hear his Tunic takes minimum. But yeah, I think there's some other things I really appreciated about this game. I love the shopkeeper design.
Yes.
One of my favorite
I'm-
things is walking into that
what's-
room. I don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't played this game yet, but
I have to figure out what the lore is behind him.
I know it's excellent.
I have to.
Something. Yeah.
I love that. I love the way that the kind of manual has this unfolding thing where over time you'll pick up items before you know what they do, and the manual that you find later on will like tell you what they are. So like I picked up a little thing that I assumed was a passive boost of some kind very early on. I didn't know what it did, but I equipped it, and then like an hour and a half later, I found a manual page in a later area that was like, here's what these symbols mean. And I'm like, oh, so this raises my attack. And I'm like, great. I love it. I love how I learned that later.
Is it spoilery to talk about mechanics in this?
I would say it's spoiler to talk
Maybe.
about mechanics that it doesn't reveal. Because Tunic is a weird game. This is one of those games where story spoilers aren't really a thing, but the game very much wants you to figure the mechanics out on your own.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay, then I'll leave that at first.
just know that there is a
Okay.
lot of very exciting things hidden away that you may not see at first glance, and you're gonna want to explore a little bit to try some new things. All right. Any other thoughts on Tunic that we want to share before moving on?
Absolutely get it. That's my rating.
100%.
Please
yeah.
play
Play
this. It will enrich your life.
Especially if you already have Game Pass, not playing Tunic is like actively hurting your enjoyment.
You're making a bad decision.
Even if you're not going to finish
you
it,
should
at
play
least experience a little bit of this game because it's very fun.
You get
and if
so
you're
much
hankering
serotonin.
for a Zelda game and you don't have a Switch, this will probably fulfill that 2D Zelda itch.
Mm-hmm.
You get so much serotonin from the little boys run animation.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
He's very cute.
Okay, so moving on from that, we have Far Changing Tides. Alex, tell us about Far.
Yeah. This is the game I picked. I was just like, ooh, this looks kind of like my absolute jam and jelly. It's a it displayed itself as a pretty uh relaxing game that you could take at your own pace. Um, with the exception of one tsunami that
With
happens.
the exception of some of the aptly named changing tides.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Um. Oh, it's very atmospheric. It's like a would you describe that as 2.5D? It's
Yeah,
2D but
this
with
is a
3D objects.
2.5D game.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
very good.
where you control a little person.
Little boy,
Um,
little
yeah,
creature, little thing,
with no backstory to speak of.
and
Because
very
it's
small
very
legs.
it's God, the way that I described the the lore, like there's world building in aesthetics and the general air of things. But
There's a
other
lot of
than that,
environmental storytelling going
yeah,
on.
the world building that I sort of described it as in my notes as it was similar to LaCroix.
It's
Uh,
Waterpunk Dishonored, is I think how I had it written down,
oh,
God.
at least aesthetic wise.
I yeah. Um,
General
yeah,
game
because you get
loop.
into these. General game loop is you can control the boat that you find pretty early on in the game. That
Yeah,
not really a spoiler. And you can upgrade it through certain
it's
things.
in
Like
the
at
title art.
first,
So
yeah, yeah. At first, and they're like little repair canisters in case you screw up and like you accidentally scrape your sail along some scenery and it rips it and you're not able to travel fast enough. So there's little things for that where you can patch that up, or once you get the engine for the boat going, that's really fun. There's cool like animations for like inserting cores into the upgrade module of the ship. There's this rotating cylinder that as you go through the game like unlocks further sections of the ship, and at some point like you're even okay, that's getting into a little spoilery territory, but there's
you
upgrades.
progressively upgrade your ship with new
Yeah.
modules. Is probably the best way
Um,
to say that.
I really one of the things that I really enjoyed was finding a plant somewhere, like just
Mm.
in one of the places that you can explore. Finding a plant in one of the upgrades to the ship. There was a little potted plant area and a little skylight that you could open up with the push of a button. So I've been taking care of that and watering it with the water and air pump in the ship. Oh,
Excellent.
there's that. You can also go underwater as well, and there's
You can
there's a little
swim.
like salvage.
That's an
Yeah,
important note. You can swim as your little boy, and turn on a propeller helmet that dashes you around.
yeah. Uh, yeah. There's some pretty good. I at least in the way that I think of puzzles, pretty good or satisfying puzzles to solve. Mainly very physics based and things like that. Um,
Hey
yeah,
Brett,
general.
Hello.
you've got a face on.
Do I?
About far changing
I
times.
so we have not like a requirement, but like a you should play this game for at least the first like hour.
Yeah.
I got bored before then,
Oh,
and I am someone that loves slow burns, love atmospheric stuff. Um, but I did not like very much about what Far Changing Tides had to bring to the table because I feel like those aspects of it were mishandled, in my opinion. Um, there are, segments where you solve the puzzle as just the kid, and you release the boat from whatever thing it's snared in at the time, and then it can keep going. And then it's like, okay, uh, there's not really anything to manage. I'm just going in a straight line and enjoying the music and looking at the scenery. Okay, and then like 2 minutes go by, and it's like, okay, this is the same
All I'm
scenery. We're
doing
not really
is
going.
changing the wind direction,
Yeah, it's not really.
pumping things into the engine.
The music's good, but it only started, like 5 seconds ago, and there was just 2 minutes of silence because that's just how it was put together for some reason, and the music didn't start playing until like halfway through a very long segment of going in a straight line and not doing anything. And then, just as I get sucked into it, um, it's worth mentioning, I think, that the boat management mechanics are not like fast and snappy, and they're not meant to be. They're not like you're meant to like go down
Yeah, it
as
almost feels kind of like a single player Sea of Thieves
it's
in
where
terms of
you
like
have
the
to
speed of
manage.
managing the ship.
Yeah, you have to run around and like pull all the different like strings and push the different levers and stuff to change speed and stuff. So when you're going full speed and you're in the zone listening to the music, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, a conveniently placed thing to knock the top mast over. Oh, sorry, you couldn't get that down in time because you were going too fast by following the game's mechanics, and the zooming out of the camera didn't help at all because it zooms out to the rear and not to the front, so you can't
You can
see
zoom it out to
anything.
the front. You
It
can
just
use the arrow keys to see further in
I
either
was playing
direction.
on controller, and it would
Ah.
only let me zoom further out to center the boat in the middle of the screen. So I don't know
Aw.
if I missed a button, but
Hmm.
I will say, every time after, I think the first time it intentionally doesn't give you time to react, because I don't think you have a repair canister
Yeah, so
when the
so it
first
teaches
thing
you
goes
the
down.
repair canister.
After that, top mast never got knocked down for me because I was always fast enough. So I just gotta get faster, Brett.
I really like
do not
climbing up
like
the mast. Oh, sorry.
I don't like the management mechanics at all because it didn't feel like this for me was like I want to get to the next, puzzle that has one solution that you can figure out in like 30 seconds because it's just the satisfying like puzzle design where it's just like this is the simple physics puzzle. I want to get to
You're doing like
that.
the limbo style puzzle where you
Exactly.
have
Yeah,
a
it did feel
obvious
like Limbo.
solution. You just need to figure out how to unlock that
How to
obvious
get there.
solution.
Exactly, yeah. I much vastly preferred that part than the very clunky and slow feeling ship management that I don't know. If you're gonna have me sit and stare at the same postcard picture for like 5 minutes, they balance the interesting things incorrectly, in my opinion. And if the whole game is like that, then
So
I just got bored.
I gotta check my playtime on FAR because I have. This is one of those games. I sat down with the intent to play the opening of this. Like Brett, I got bored very quickly and took a break. Came back the next day with the intent to, okay, I'm just going to play as much of this as I need to, and wound up playing much more than that. However,
Damn.
I cannot tell you if I was having fun during this time because it was an experience where I just kind of remember the vague happening things of the game, and I think what I've narrowed it down to now is that it felt like you needed to unlock the first couple of ship modules much sooner than you do, because by an hour into the game you only really have one or two things that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And it really feels very limiting in that you're repeatedly doing the same couple of actions to move forward. The on-foot sections are fun, but the on-foot sections are not very long. They're 5-minute segments in between. They're few and far between. Once I got the later module that I'm sure Alex has also unlocked, where you can explore in kind of a new axis, that made it a lot more interesting. But then it becomes the same thing where, like, even though I can now move in more directions, I can't. They're not using it. I'm not actually doing it. I'm just still going in a straight line once I get to where I need to be.
Yeah.
So, I think that this game thinks that it benefits from the 2.5D perspective. I don't think it does as much as it should, because the whole time I was thinking of this, I was like, if it just had even like a limited movement from side to side, right? Of me being able to move in different directions, especially because some of the foot puzzles, you like walk by a thing and see a cliff that ends like 5 feet to the right.
Yeah.
And you just have to figure out how to get around it in a different way, even though like literally a couple feet away is open water.
Yeah.
And I just question that. I'm like, okay, it does look good. It's a cool environment. but it feels like I should be able to turn the ship just a little bit to not have to
Yeah.
deal with the problems that are happening. So yeah, this game's weird for me. I hit a point with it where I stopped after there's nothing that I can do, and I'm not sure if the game is broken or if I missed something, because I've explored the entire area on foot and in the ship, and I can't go back. So I don't know what's going on, but I haven't found anything yet. I might try one more time to see if I can figure out the solution to this area. But if not, I'm like, at this point, I don't think I'm having as much fun as this game wants me to have. I did find it a very enjoyable podcast game. This is a nice game I could see myself sitting down with like a cup of coffee and playing for a while I'm like listening to something else or watching the morning news or something. This is a nice game for that purpose. I don't know that I would play it just to finish it. But by the same token, I gave this big rant about heart a week ago. Far has heart. Far is one of those games that has the heart,
It does.
especially in the art team. And
And the
I
music.
learned this game has a game before it. This is a sequel to another game.
It is?
I don't
Yeah.
think directly. It doesn't feel like it's a direct
Ah.
sequel, but at least spiritual. The team clearly wanted to make this, and I think they did a good job making what they wanted to make. But it's just, I think I might have to accept that it's not for me.
Yeah.
So I feel like I felt I was close to the end of the game, and I still think I am, but I don't know anymore. Because the last I played it, I got to this point where it's like, okay, you did this really significant thing. Why is the ship hooked up to that and being lifted out of the water? Am I going to fly now? No. Okay, it's just stuck there. And then yeah, you just have to wait and enjoy the scenery if you enjoy it. And then after a set amount of time, um, it releases you back into the water, and I go like, that felt like
Unnecessary.
a little bit of a failed climax, and I don't know what it's going to do from here.
Yeah. The thing that's kind of keeping me interested in this game is that I'm curious to see where it goes. Because I think the world they have presented here is very interesting, especially silently being able to tell this much about the environment through just the environment art alone and how the world itself is kind of constructed. I think is very cool, but that thin narrative thread, I don't think is gonna. If the game keeps the pace it's been going at, I don't think it's strong enough to pull me to the end. Even now, like I have enough things on the ship that I'm almost constantly doing something. There's very little downtime now. But for large portions of it, I'm just standing on a pedal and jumping repeatedly.
Yeah.
And that still is not the most engaging thing. So I think, because the big thing in a game like Sea of Thieves or Guns of Icarus, if I think back to games that have flight and like clunky quote-unquote vehicles that are really enjoyable, the major thing that you spend most of your time doing is always steering and like moving the ship in a direction and kind of guiding it along, and the lack of ability to do that here I think hurts it in a way that I don't think they necessarily thought was a big problem, but I think for a lot of players it will be a problem,
Yeah.
especially when the environment looks like you could just go 5 feet to the side and
It's
bypass the problem.
It's like when you go to the very end border of like a COD map or something, and the only thing stopping you from leaving the map boundaries is just an invisible wall at the end of a completely open street, and it's like, okay, game design, that's fine.
Or maybe one piece of corrugated metal that's a PNG.
Yeah. And there's also a lot of things on the ship that are really cool, but you only use them once, and I haven't found a use for them since, which is kind of annoying, because there's like this cool hook thing you get on the back that you can like drop down and do like I've done 2 puzzles with it, I think, in the hour and a half that I've had it on my ship.
Oh, there's
I've used it for nothing
salvage
else
along the seafloor that you can use the crane to pick up all the time.
But I never needed to because I always had enough. So I think it just did a bad job of incentivizing that.
I've been
Yeah.
trying to look for them because there's tiny little trophies that I want
Yeah, it's.
in some of them.
I think this game hides the content that's there too much.
Yeah.
In a way.
Point where like at least for me, like all the interest placed in the management aspects and the way that's handled just feels completely misplaced to the point where I kind of wish it was just like it was just like Sable, and you could just go. And when you
Yeah.
go, you in a direction, you find a place, and even if it's just like linear, and there's only one place you can go to at a time, that's fine because it's really hard to get that like completely open scope. I'm not asking for like a crazy reworking of the game like that, but just getting to a place. Maybe the puzzles are a little more complicated, or there's more of them, and then you can go to the next one, and you can go to the next one. And please make the music play more often than almost never when you're
Especially because
just
it's
going.
really good.
So good. I want to hear it. And when
It's
it's
like Breath
silent,
of the
it's not
Wild.
like
It's just it refuses to play the amazing soundtrack that it has.
exactly.
I
And
had
it's not
violin
like
withdrawal from it.
if like if when it was silent, it at least had like, oh, here's the sound of like they really have really good foley of like the breeze and the waves, and like maybe there's like birds chirping and
Yeah.
you could like hear the deers calling. There's none of that. It's just quiet. It's quiet and like some water and splashing, and that's it when it's not
And you hear
playing
metal
music.
noises sometimes.
It's yeah. But like this game should be more of like the ambience should be much more in your face than how it is, because there's a
You
lot
should
of
be
periods of just
constantly
silence.
hearing water.
Yes, you should be
Constantly.
constantly hearing water.
And so the interesting thing about this game, I made a game early in college as a student project called Meridian. And Meridian was a game about trawling from island to island in a boat and getting out on each island and doing a puzzle. Very similar to this. The one thing I made sure to do, I had no music in this game. Intentional choice, because constant water noises everywhere. Everywhere was the water noise, and everywhere were seagulls and whatnot chirping, and there was constant environmental stuff going on. And that worked to hold attention for the like this game was like an hour long. It was not long. It was a very short game. But I think in that case that meant it didn't get old. So I don't know. I it's an interesting prospect of how to handle these games. And I think the honest thing is this game has more competition now than I think the last one did. Because there's a lot of games that fulfill that fantasy of like keeping a vehicle alive and going. No Man's Sky, I think, is one of the chief examples of like you have your ship and you're constantly upgrading and repairing it and kind of taking care of it and moving along to different places in that nomadic way. Wasteland 3, right past the tutorial, starts the same way. You get your trawler and you can kind of go off in different directions. Weird West is a similar way as well if you play that. So there's a lot of games that fulfill that fantasy, and I think Far just has a severe lack of pacing to account for the mechanics that are at play. Because like now that I'm 2.5 hours in, the ship feels good enough that I have everything I need for an engaging loop, but I've just hit a massive wall and I don't know what to do because there's no indication and there's no blue items to interact with, so I don't know what's going on. Maybe I'll show Alex after this, but it's an interesting
Maybe I can help.
situation. All right. Moving on to our final game. Unless final thoughts about Far? No.
If you have Game Pass, try it. If you don't have Game Pass,
It's probably not a
look
reason
into
to
it.
buy Game Pass.
Yeah, it's not a Game Pass buying game.
It is a cheap game though. If you're interested in this game, I have a feeling you're gonna know already when you see it.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those games that you'll very clearly kind of have an idea of if you're gonna want to play it.
Did you guys use mouse and keyboard or controller? Because it's
Controller.
also okay. I used mouse and keyboard. Because it's also advertised on Switch, and I was wondering. I felt pretty good on mouse and keyboard. How did it feel on controller?
It felt good on
as far as
controller.
the controls go.
It was fine, yeah.
Yeah, it felt fine. It plays like Limbo. I that's the most I can say about the controller controls. All right, moving on to Deedlit and Wonder Labyrinth.
The
Deedlit
main
in
event.
Wonder Labyrinth was my pick. I picked this game because I saw someone had recommended it to me back when it was in early access and was like, "Hey, this is like a good Castlevania clone. You might enjoy it." And I was like, "Oh, nah." Didn't play it for 3 years.
You fool.
And here we are. It's out now. It's on Game Pass. This is one of the best games I've played in a long time.
It feels so good.
It's
And
butter.
it is like Deedlit has the perfect amount of complexity. Where
Congratulations, Ryan, you're 3 for 3 on the Game
Look,
Pass games.
Yeah, seriously.
you don't have the fancy systems that Bloodstained had. You're not upgrading your weapons. You're not doing a bunch of like monster collection. This game has far fewer supporting systems than Bloodstained does, and I love Bloodstained, which is another like Castlevania game, inspired by Castlevania game, created by the creator of Castlevania. So I think it's the most direct comparison. Deedlit, specifically Record of Lodos War, Deedlit, and Wonder Labyrinth.
Yes.
The full title.
Full name.
Which I believe Record of Lodos War is an old novel, Japanese novel series that got adapted into anime and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole existing franchise that was very popular,
Wow.
I believe, in the 90s, early 2000s.
It feels like it has some 90s fantasy
yeah.
to it, definitely.
Yeah.
This game feels like somebody just made a Symphony of the Night type game today. Like, they just did it. They just made Symphony of the Night again. It has everything in the game is with the same like pixel ratio as classic PS1 games. The animations are all gorgeous.
So good.
Some of the best
Oh.
like pixel art animations I've ever seen.
The UI is really nice too, and the
UI is
system- and
great.
the
It's very
couple of
readable.
systems that go along with that.
That's a big thing to me is the UI is very readable, which is often a problem in this type of game. The only issue I had, and this is legitimately like the only problem I legitimately have with this game after it, is that the PC version of Game Pass, I could not find a way to make controller button prompts appear.
Huh.
Don't know if there's a way to do it. It was fine because they show up in the menu and I could rebind the keys fine, so my controller was working fine. I was able to play with the controller. It just would constantly tell me press like Z or X on my keyboard to do something, and I'm like, that's not helpful.
Yeah, it's weird.
So that's the only issue I had. But other than that, I love the art style of this game. I think it's one of the best like pixel art Castlevania inspired games I've seen because it has a limited color palette for every stage in a way that feels very cohesive. They do an excellent job of hiding things in ways that aren't super hard to find.
I'm at the point right now where I just went back to the starting area to find like all the cracks in the walls to find stuff. I was like, "Where are you? Where are you? I want to find that. I want to find. I want to find you. Give me some more magic options."
And, like half the spells in this game are just hidden away, and you can find them in other areas when you go back to them. It's very imminently beatable. So I have about 7 hours total in this game. Beat it. Very good. Excellent time all around. Yeah, I think this is just one of the most competent Castlevania clones I've ever played, and I would happily put it up there next to some of the classic like Game Boy and PS1 Castlevania games in terms of quality.
Yeah.
So I haven't beaten the game yet, and we were talking about secrets too. I think, unfortunately, you remember the really cool secret that I was telling you guys about.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that only occurs once in the game.
Honestly,
I found a lot of
that's
other
kind
cool
of
secrets though.
it's kind of badass of them to do something that only once
Is it-
though, because that's like that's
it really
devotion.
Is it really spoilers for me to talk about that? I feel like it
I don't
is.
think so. I don't think people are
Okay.
going to pick up on that.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Easily.
There's one point in the game I think it's the first area, right, or the second area,
It's either the first or
Um,
second.
where
Yeah.
there's some weird pixel stuff going on some of the pillars, and I was thinking to myself, that's
Looks funky.
weird. That kind of looks like a QR code. So I take out my phone and scan it, and it's a QR code hidden in one of the pillars. And it not like a website thing. A little thing pops up that says like stand and jump here to break the floor.
Which is just
And-
so cool.
And
I just
I
love
jump
it.
there, and it takes like 50 jumps to break it. You have to be really persistent.
Yeah, you have to have found that hint to know
Yeah,
Jeez.
where it is.
and it is. Oh my god! And there's a really cool weapon down at the bottom that I was using for like half of the game before it finally got out damaged by other stuff.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like I was trivializing the game too, because of how they handled enemy density and
Mhm.
Yep.
exploration and things like that. I
Because
think it was
you
still
get more
pretty well
damage.
balanced.
The enemies don't necessarily get more health all the time, but you don't gain a ton of health either. So if you get hit by early level enemies, you're still going to be taking damage. But of course, in a genius mechanical design,
Of course.
damage doesn't matter because you have two states you can be in at all times. You got your fire state and your wind state. And in these states, you have levels. So you collect cubes of the opposite type by beating an
Level
enemy.
3.
Oh, I love that sound
Yes.
clip so much.
Yeah.
God, when I can switch to that and heal in the middle of a boss fight, I just
So
Yeah.
the way
It's so
this system
Second wind.
works, which I think is like, this is a system straight out of a classic platformer that slots so easily into Castlevania style gameplay, where you've got 2 phases to switch between, and you kill an enemy, you get cubes for your other phase that will level up that phase, which gains you increased damage, and at level 3 you will heal constantly when you're in the phase. Taking
you
a
get
hit
and then
drops you down a
usually-
level. So you're constantly switching between these 2 states to increase the level of the other one and make sure you have healing ready at all times. And you're immune to damage of the same type when you're in the state. So when you're in your fire state, you don't take damage from fireballs. When you're in your wind
You also
state, you
can't
don't take damage
damage
from wind
fire enemies.
projectiles. Yeah. So enemies have their own resistances that it displays in these cute little like dice mock-ups where
Yeah.
like red dice
Yeah,
are
that was
resistances,
cool.
blue dice are weaknesses. So you get this cool little visual of everything. And you only ever have these 2 states, and those 2 states are enough. Like, they knew when to stop and be like, okay, this is perfect for what we're going for. And enemies are going to use attacks that aren't element aspected, so you do still have to like regularly dodge things. But there are like bullet hell style sequences where enemies are covering the screen in projectiles of alternating colors, and if you nail swapping between your forms, you get
it feels
your mana.
fantastic.
All your mana comes back, because when you absorb a projectile of the same color, you get mana back, and you can just unleash hell with all the spells that you have. It's just such a good gameplay loop that I think works so well.
Very
And
easy
I'm
to
gonna-
get into a flow state.
I'm gonna give a like slight gameplay spoiler for one of the final bosses here, because this is one of the Castlevania games where you play this game and like some bosses are gonna be walls, right? I had a wall at a certain boss, so I was like, this is really hard. It took me like a full 2 hours to beat that one boss.
Jesus.
The 2
When
gods
I
for me.
did, it wasn't the 2
Double
gods for me.
bars.
It was the like final regular boss before the end of the game. It's a 2-phase boss. It had a second phase that I just was not really getting to reliably. So what would happen is I'd get like one shot as soon as I entered the second phase, because I wasn't understanding the mechanic perfectly. As soon as I grasped it, one of the most satisfying bosses to get rid of ever. Super satisfying. Then I get to the second to last like boss area, and it's a boss gauntlet of every boss in the game in order.
Oh no! Ah,
And I beat it first try. And it is one of the most satisfying things that I've ever done in a game.
That's incredible.
It's one of those things where, like, that is to me the ultimate test of, did you learn how to play this game correctly? If you did, not going to be a problem that you have to fight every boss in order. And from what I can tell, they are just the same boss. So, like, the first one, very easy to kill because it has very low HP, but gradually they get more and more powerful as you're realizing, oh, I don't think they scaled these at all. These are just the boss again. Which
Good.
means when I get up to the one that I just had a ton of trouble with, which was just the last area and is still very high HP relative to the weapon I have, I was like, oh no. I'm going to have to do the whole thing again. And then managed to scrape by, and it was one of the best fights I've ever done in a game like this. I loved it. And it works so well because the game is controlled, it's short, it knows exactly how long it needed to be to give you new content. The bosses are all very well designed. I just think Deedlit is like, this is probably my favorite game that we've played for this show by a significant margin.
I think it's the most like polished and tightly designed out of any of the ones that we've picked so far.
Yeah.
Like not that any of the other ones are like not that none of them are tightly designed or polished.
Just
But
Deedlit
this
had the
is, like-
perfect amount of restraint.
Exactly, yeah. They just made Symphony of the Night again. Which, as we've probably discussed before, you can do that and it's fine because your
And this
game
is shorter
will be
than
almost
something that I
perfect.
think by a good
Yeah.
deal. But
By a
it is
good
a
chunk,
perfect encapsulation of like how to do that kind of mechanical set of things
Yeah.
in a game. And importantly, none of us are talking about the story because the story is nonsense. Just make
The 2, I guess, problems I had with it were, and this is because I was doing mouse and keyboard, I had to do a lot of button remapping for it to feel good.
Hmm.
makes sense.
And then make sure to go back to the save statue after you beat a boss.
Yeah, that's probably a good
because
idea.
it doesn't save then. And sometimes there will be enemies filling the room after a boss.
Oh yeah, when
and
you
they'll
kill a boss,
hand
the
your
next area
butt
is a
to
new
you.
stage.
And then you go back to your save point before you beat the boss. So go back to the previous room and save after you beat the boss. That's what I've learned.
I was lucky in that I remember playing 1 or 2 games that pulled that crap back on my like GameCube. And so as soon as I saw I can go into a new area, immediately hoofed it backwards to the save point.
Gotta
Every time.
gotta
I
save
like
scum as best as you can in a game like
the
this.
the ability to beat the meat is very funny to get up to all 3 levels before a boss.
Yeah.
That's fun. I like
Yeah,
beating the
I like
meat.
that.
And the thing is, you're going to be in level 3 constantly. This is a game that really fulfills that power fantasy style of Castlevania game. I also loved you have different move sets to some degree in the different forms.
Oh, the
So your
dodging is
wind
different,
form
yeah.
has constant hovering. You can always just be in the air. And you can like use your movement keys to be at different height levels, and it's very, very satisfying to do that because you can like just dodge entire boss patterns by just floating above their head. Of course, not all of them because they accounted for that, but
Sometimes the shield bounces and you get blindsided in the back of the head.
sometimes the shield bounces. You have the fire mechanic, which gives you a slide once you unlock it that is invincible. So you get like a proper dodge roll type thing that you can use to just go through mechanics that you don't want to deal with, which is a great way to deal with getting on the other side of a boss if you need to go through them.
The fire slide, it goes through enemies, right? And you get those iframes.
Goes through enemies and you're invincible.
The wind slide, it doesn't go through enemies.
I think it does go through
slowly
enemies, but you still take
slide.
damage.
Yeah, it's just a
You'll
slide.
get knocked out of it if you do. So it's like it's a very different thing that you have to like constantly keep in mind what state that you're in and what moves you have at the moment. I think is very, very satisfying.
Yeah.
Other thoughts on Deedlit?
Oh, fun. Good stuff. Get it even if you don't have Game Pass.
Oh yeah, I'm sure this would be an
seriously.
excellent Switch game as well.
I have rated it in my notes an epic after image out of 10.
Oh yeah, so many after. There's an
Yes.
after
So many
images
after image.
toggle in the menu. If you turn that off, you're an idiot.
If you turn that off, honestly, like stop watching the show. We don't want you here.
So early on in the game, before I got a lot of spells and abilities, I was using the backdash constantly. I was using the backdash to move faster because I would.
Yep, that's the classic
across
Symphony
the
of the Night
screen.
thing. If you go watch
Yeah.
any
I
Symphony
was
of
really
the Night
like,
speedrun, everyone is backdashing constantly.
Yeah.
I really haven't found myself using it later in the game.
Oh, you
though.
will.
I was wondering if you guys did.
You will.
I didn't get very far in, so. But I will
There are
finish
some
it.
bosses where you have to. You don't have to, but you'll have a much harder time if you don't. So it isn't an essential move, but it becomes more important at certain later bosses where that little bit of backwards mobility that keeps you faced the same direction is very important to keep like find a phase where you can do some damage to a boss that is constantly attacking. So yeah, I think it's just got such tight balance. The weapon variety is really good, where it has 2 like basic weapon types that you find very often of like the directional spear and rapier attacks, and then you have like the sword attacks, which are little swipes. But you'll find special weapons at various points where you get like a boomerang at one point that has an actual boomerang curve. You find other various special things that I don't want to spoil. So all sorts of cool things.
Did you guys go for special weapons? Did you stay on like the light and fast, or did you go for heavy and slow usually?
I did both.
Medium.
Yeah, I kind of because I'm still at the beginning, but going off of what I can remember from playing Symphony of the Night and from Bloodstained is I kind of just like go with whatever has the biggest number at the time, and even if it's like different timing than what I'm used to, I just kind of like just got to get used to it.
Yeah.
And I think at least for me, compared to Bloodstained, I think I like this a lot more. I think Bloodstained has like not that it's a bad game at all.
Yeah, I liked Bloodstained quite a bit, but I think this is my preference of the 2 as well.
It's because this is just such a tightly designed, like snappy. It has that like appearance of being like when they start throwing mechanics at you very early on, it's like this is too complicated for me. I'm gonna get overwhelmed very quickly, and then no, because you just they force you to
perfectly
learn
like
them.
pace things out so that you're never
Exactly.
in the deep end until you're the frog sitting in the boiling water and you're like, oh, I have to do all the mechanics.
Yeah, but by that point, you know,
You're capable of doing
the
it.
assumption, yeah, the assumption is that you will have learned all of them. But it's so satisfying to pull it off. It has the Ikaruga element swapping and the cave story, shape collecting when level down of weapon,
Cool spells.
and Symphony of the Night. Cool
Lots
spell.
of fun spells to find.
I don't have any negatives written for this game. I don't have
Yeah.
any, because there
Again,
aren't
my
any.
only negative is the lack of controller button prompts on PC.
Yeah.
It's the only problem I've had, and it could just be I didn't find the setting for some reason. It's entirely possible. I doubt it, but it's possible. Yeah, this is one of my favorite games I've played recently. Certainly very good. The perfect amount of time is spent on this game, where comparative to Bloodstained, because Bloodstained is like an up to 20-something hour game, depending on how you play it. This is, I think you'd be hard pressed to find this game taking people more than 10. Because like I got stuck on a boss for over an hour, probably not 2 hours, but I think around an hour, and my total playtime was about like 7 hours and 5 minutes or something. So it is certainly beatable in that time frame. You do unlock additional modes once you beat the game. You get some cool stuff that you would expect from a Castlevania type game. So there's lots to do, fun things you can experiment with, but the regular playtime is not going to be that much different than 7 hours, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To me, just a very good game that I think, especially considering it's not under a gig, I believe.
Really?
It's very small, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, this game is a very tiny download. Yeah, 100% worth playing. I think if you at all enjoy these 2D Castlevania style games, you're gonna have a great time with this.
Yep.
It really feels like someone made another GBA Castlevania game that is excellent. Yeah, love the entire thing. So, with that said, any other thoughts on Deedlit, or are we ready to announce our games for the next month of Game Pass Games Club?
I think we are good.
I'm good to go. You guys go first in case anyone picks one of the games that I was thinking.
All right, I have a good few set away, so I'll go last, so that way you can pick what you want. But Brett, you got a game picked?
All right. I've had my eye on this for a long time, and I think we should all be able to play it because EA Play. Alice, the Madness Returns.
Oh, okay.
And also, I'll point out, you don't have to do this also because it's extra, but you can get the original Alice platformer shooter game if there's like an add-on you can download separately, and it just counts as DLC for this, and you get both games. But yeah, I want to try this for a while because it just looks really weird. And you know, when the guy who makes the game, when his name is American McGee, I mean, you just gotta.
You've got to try it.
You just gotta go.
You have to know.
Yeah.
All right, Alex.
I'm going to force you two guys to play Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion.
I'm excited. That was what I was going to pick had you not picked it. So, excellent to see. I think.
Well, I can.
I got a second pick that I'm just as excited to play. Another EA game that just appeared. I think it should work okay. Lost in Random. I am very curious to play Lost in Random. I think it's going to be a fun time. So that's on the list. I will. Don't worry, you two. I will post this into the chat so you guys have it saved. But that's going to be the episode for today. That's it. We did it. We played all the games. We talked about all the games. Final thoughts. This was a good month. I think there were no games that were bad here.
Yeah, I'd say.
Which is a key thing. We've had some stinkers in the past.
We really have, which is what
currently
happens
uninstalling Wasteland 3 as we speak.
I already got rid of it.
I'll keep it around for a little while and see if I play it anymore. But Wasteland 3 might be the best game that I just don't have a lot of interest in playing. That might be where I land on that game. That said, we'll see you next time. Podcast this week, gonna be a different time. It's airing on Star Wars Day, May 4th. So be ready for that. Do fun Star Wars themed activities. That's it, that's the show.
Good job.
Remember to pick better games.
I've so I've